about going down a rabbit hole. And remember, Kevin, the first couple of weeks, Kevin said, well, this is the lesson, but this is what, and he took off and went down a rabbit hole. And well, we're finding another one today, so we're just going to have to get used to that. I started this lesson out trying to pick up where he left off, and I got to the tabernacle, and that's where I stopped. I said, man, that tabernacle was just, and I'm in a building process right now. Most of y'all have seen what I've tried to do around the house, and with a lot of help from people here and contractors. And so I was kind of like in a building mode. And here the children of Israel out in the wilderness, and God gives them a blueprint. Give Moses a blueprint. I want you to build me a tabernacle. Mm-hmm. What does tabernacle mean? A tent. Actually, yeah, okay. And also there's another word, dwell. A dwelling, a dwell. So yes, he wants to build a dwelling. He wants to have a building built, something that he specifies, and so that he can dwell amongst the Israelites. And right there is a lesson in itself right there. God wants you to dwell amongst, if I'm one of the children of Israel in the wilderness, I'm just blown away by that statement right there. God wants to be here with us. Now, if you back up several hundred years, Adam and Eve, they had the same situation, didn't they? God walked in the garden with them. He was there. They had it. They had exactly what the Israelites are fixing to get back to. God was with Adam and Eve in the garden. It said that he was walking in the garden. And it's just amazing that sin messed that up, and now God's actually trying to I want to dwell amongst you. That's just, you think about, if I'm an Israelite, oh man, look at what we did. Yeah, God wants to dwell with us. The living and the real God, the only true and living God, wants to dwell amongst us. Well, he's given them a blueprint, a tabernacle. A tabernacle, as Steve said, a tent. Why do you say a tent?
When it was in the wilderness, it was like a temporary dwelling, right?
Yeah.
Movable.
And it was movable. Very good. It was movable, and it was temporary, and it was a wooden-sided tent. If you think about it, I don't do that up there, but I'm going to have to learn because a picture is worth 1,000 words, and I've got to do a lot of talking tonight to make up for all the pictures I don't have. But it was basically a wooden, three-sided wooden tent with what was the top made of? It had 3 layers on the top. It had some kind of fabric, woven fabric over the top. Then it had, sealskins dyed red, a red top over that. And then it had porpoise skins. It might even not been red, it might have been manatee skins. I knew them things were good for something. Over the top of that. So it's 3 layers of material over the top, and it's pulled down and staked to the ground. But everything has a plan to this thing. It's very intricate on the way they built this thing. And if you get online, I didn't write down the website, but there's different websites. They actually have animated 3D videos showing how, the best they can understand. I mean, you start reading these things, and you go, what? What did I just read? We'll read some of this in just a minute. The detail that went into how I want this thing built, like 2 cubits high, 3 cubits wide, and I want the wood, the 4 corners with horns on it. Well, the authors of these websites online have really visualized. You say, whoa, that's what it meant. Yeah, okay. Well, they had the tabernacle itself was wooden planks, and they have, you know what a tinion is? I know Kenny does because he does woodworking. A tinion is a tongue on a board, and then you have a socket, and you could put tinion and sockets You put them together, you put a peg through it, and that would hold it together. Well, they had pinions on the bottom, and they had silver, solid silver blocks that had the sockets in it. So the boards went into a socket, and that's what held the board up. You got a probably 80-pound piece of silver on the bottom holding this board up. You put it together, and you slide another one together. You had 20 boards on each side of the thing. I believe it was 20. 20 boards all interlocked together in silver footings all the way around. Got in the back there, they had like 10 on the back because it was twice as long as it was wide. And then they come up the other side, and that was your wooden three-sided building, and then they put the tarps over the top. And it was just, it's amazing when you see it online, it's just the things they did there. And they did all this out in the wilderness, and it had to be able to be moved real quick. Now, how did they know when to move this thing? Anybody have any idea when do you move it?
I think God told them when to go.
God told them, how did God tell them, John?
Pillar of fire by night,
Pillar of cloud or smoke.
Cloud by day, yeah.
Yep. And when that moves, say, hey, we got to go. The thing's moving. We got to go. Load up. And that's where I started finding things out. I've read this story before, and I found out things on, I guess I lived with the tabernacle the last 2 days, really studying it. I found out things I never read before. It's been there the whole time. So maybe I can pass on something I've learned. Maybe you didn't hear or didn't read about also.
Where do you get the silver from?
Where do they get the silver from?
Where they get the wood from?
Well,
In the wilderness.
they had gold too. The inside of these three walls was gold plated from top to bottom.
But where did they get the gold and silver?
Well, you tell me.
From the Egyptians.
From the Egyptians. When they walked out, the Egyptians said, here, take this and go. Please go. They plundered the Egyptians, and it wasn't even at a threat. It was, please take this money and leave. Just go. We want you out of here. They walked out with, there was, if I remember correctly, 27 talents of gold involved in the making of this. And a talent was a lot of gold. A lot of gold. The whole three walls, those solid boards, are all pegged into silver footings. If you took a concrete block that has two holes in it, that's basically what it looked like. Stood on its side, and they put the two pegs in there. Another one, all the way down the wall. That whole wooden wall, everything was plated with gold, inside and out. Now that's a shiny building. And then
Heavy to move too.
it had to be moved, exactly. And that's the part that I didn't realize how they did it till I started studying this thing. That's what I want to get into today. But now they've got this thing, they had a pillar of fire by night. I don't know, I can't explain that one. It's a fire coming out of the ground, coming out of the altar, whatever, right there. They said the God's here because there's his fire. And come daylight, it's a cloud, give them shade. So they never had darkness. They were always lit up by the fire right there. You think about it. And they were never in the sunshine because he always gave them shade. But okay, the thing starts moving. Well, they got to pack this thing up. That's where we want to talk about that this morning. So I want to, I did make a couple of copies of some things that I found online. There's a guy online, his name is Jeremy. I never did get the last name, but his website was Sabbath Thoughts. And some of the things, I like what he said, but you had to kind of filter through that some of the things were a little bit questionable in the way he said it. So, but I want to read these things. And so before we get started, let's go to, and let's see, where am I going? I don't know where I'm going. I told Greg this morning, I've got this lesson together, but I don't even know how I'm going to present it yet. So we're trying to figure it out. Like, Greg, have you ever done a lesson where you got in and you go, wow, I never saw that before?
You mean during a lesson?
No, I mean making a lesson up, getting a lesson
all the
together.
time.
Say, wow,
Yeah.
where did that come from? Well, that's what happened to me on this here. And And it said, oh, well, that explains this verse over here.
Yes.
Now it makes sense. Why I was, okay. And that's what I found this morning. So that's what I want to relay to you this morning. Let me see, where's my notebook at? There it is. So the tabernacle, it's 150 foot long. This is the outer wall. The inner wall, the wooden walls that were, we just talked about, the gold plated walls, they were 45 foot by 15 foot. Okay, that's the gold plated part. Outside of that was an exterior wall that kind of, it was the outer court. It was, bug went down my throat. The outer wall was linen sheets. So it wasn't much, but there was a barrier. You couldn't just walk up to the tabernacle. You had to go through something. So there was a barrier there. And it was 150 foot long, 75 foot wide. And at the east end, it was always set up the same way. The east end would be just like that right there, east. The door, the gate, was 30 foot wide. So that was a perimeter around it, for military term, right? You didn't get into that without permission or having the right clearance. Matter of fact, you didn't go into that if you weren't a Levite. You didn't go into it if you weren't from the sons of Aaron, or the tribe of the family of Aaron. The Levites were all Aaron, Moses, all his sons. That was the tribe of Levi. God said, you're going to be the priest. We're priests, okay, well, what do I do now? If you are the sons of Aaron, you are the priest inside. And that was one of the things that come up to my mind, I found out. Let's look at Numbers chapter 4. I mean, I've read this stuff, and this guy, Jeremy, he made a comment in one of these little writings that he made a comment about the lineage. When you start reading in Numbers, is who begat who, and they had 150,000 this, and these people were, and you kind of go, just, I don't need to know how many people there were in the Asher, tribe of Asher, but I saw myself in what he wrote real quick. Let me find which one, and this one here also. So we will get to that in just a moment. So, okay, Numbers chapter 4. So, we have a tabernacle that needs to be moved. The pillar of fire is leaving. Well, let's put it to daylight. Let's make it easy. It's leaving. The pillar of cloud is leaving. We've got to load this thing up. So how does it happen? They had 3 families of the Levite tribe. The Kohathites, from the man named Kohath. The Gershonites, which from the man named Gershon. And the Merariites, which was from the man Merari. Each one of them had a special part to do in the moving of the tabernacle. Which is, I thought, okay, the Levites just grab the thing up and let's go. But it was divided up, it was specified, a certain group. Steve had to do this, Flint had to do that, and Greg has this other part. And we can't, you don't swap off. This is your job to do every time it moves, and nobody changes anything. And this was God's specified. So who's Greg to say, well, you know what, I want to do what Flint did. He did that last week. That really looked neat. I want to know. Ooh, we can't swap off. No, it's not happening. That was the what, and that's what got him in trouble. So we look at that verse 1, chapter 4. Then the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, and I'm going to get into a bunch of names here I probably won't be able to say right, but we'll get through it. The Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, take a census of the descendants of Kohath from among the sons of Levi, by their families, by their father's household, from 30 years upward even to 50 years old. All who entered the service to do the work in the tent of meeting. The tent of meeting is a fancy name for tabernacle. Okay, they called it both. Okay, so 30 years old to 50. I'm free. I don't have to do it. I'm too old. So, yeah, with that, if you're 30 years old to 50 years old, guess where you're going? You're going into service. Okay, this is the work of the descendants of Kohath in the tent of meeting concerning the most holy things. Now, what is the most holy thing? Somebody just take a gander. What is the most holy things?
The things in the most holy.
That and everything inside the tabernacle, all the furniture. They had 7 things in the tabernacle. We had the Ark of the Covenant, which is in the most holy. There was a division in there. Okay? You had the table, huh? The candlestick, 7 candlestick, 7-prong, a menorah, I think is what they call it. They had the table of showbread, which was interesting by itself. You had, that was the 3 things on the inside. Outside you had the what?
Didn't they have a wash basin?
A wash basin, a solid bronze wash basin. They couldn't go in this thing unless they washed their feet and washed their hands. Okay?
Staff,
They, huh?
the staff, the rod.
No, that was inside of the Ark of the Covenant. This rod that budded, that was inside the box. Okay? This is the boxes that are, these are all the pieces of furniture. You had the Ark of the Covenant, you had the lampstand, you had the table of showbread.
The chair. Chair.
The who?
The chair.
The chair, no chair.
No chair.
There was a mercy seat was built into the Ark of the Covenant. Okay? Then you had the altar where they sacrificed the animals and burnt them. You had the table of showbread. What am I missing? The bronze wash basin. It was 7 things. This is what Kohath, his descendants, when it said, this is the work of the descendants of Kohath, the tent of meeting concerning the most holy things. Well, first off, as a red flag, the most holy things would have been the Ark of the Covenant. When the camp sets out and Aaron and his sons shall go in, they shall take down the veil. Now, what veil are they talking about? First, we have to understand the wooden building that's got the gold-plated boards. It said it was 45 foot by 30 by 15 foot. Well, you go in 30 foot, and there's a veil. You're not going past that veil.
It covered the ark of the testimony.
Well, the veil is there. It separates. This is the holy place. You go up to that veil, that's the most holy place inside there. Nobody goes inside of that except the high priest once a year. I keep thinking, how many spiders are in that thing all year long? I'm thinking of Vicky every time I read that. Oh man, it's been a whole year since anybody even opened that curtain up. Okay? So this is the veil. The same veil that when Christ died on the cross, it was torn from the top to the bottom. This veil is 15 foot tall, I believe. I believe it was. 15 foot tall. And somebody ripped it. No, God ripped it from the top to the bottom. If it had been a man, it would have ripped from the bottom to the top. Okay? That's the veil. They said, well, okay, we're fixing to move. Aaron, high priest, he has to go in there and take the veil down and cover the Ark of the Covenant. Wow. Nobody sees this thing. They cover it up. It's got the cherubim on top of it. That's where the mercy seat you're thinking of. The mercy seat is on top of it. It's the cherubim, and I keep thinking to myself, he said, don't make any graven images or anything like that. Yet this is stuff they had to build in his specifications, but it's not his picture. It's not a figure of God. This is the things that are around God. Okay, it had the 2 cherubim. You see the picture in the book right there. That is pretty much what the Ark of the Covenant would look like on page 56. There's 2 angel-looking things or cherubim. They're supposed to be looking down into the ark. That's where the rod that budded, Aaron's rod, that would be inside that box. There was 3 things inside there. The rod that budded, what else?
Pot of manna.
Okay. The what?
Showbread.
Nope.
Man.
Manna. a pot of manna. The same pot of manna that if you get more than you get more than one day's work, it gets worms and rots the next day. They've got this same pot in there for, I don't know, maybe they changed it out. I don't know, but they got a pot of manna inside that box, and they've got the 10 Commandments, the stones inside that box. And this box is covered with gold inside and out, and it's got the gold lid on it. And they're fixing to move this thing. This is Kohath's job. Okay? Only the high priest could even approach that thing. He's the only one that can even go through the veil into that holy of holy place. Okay? So now, his job is to take the veil down, and I just, in my mind, I think he'd probably like this here, and cover that thing up. Cover it up. And then I believe they put a blue cloth over that. This cloth here would have been, they said, red, blue, and purple woven cords, a cloth. It's a woven cloth. Covered up, they put a solid blue cover over that. Then they put the poles, which are gold plated, through the rings. They had rings on it. They put it through. Now you can get the guys, you can come in and move it now. I thought about this because think about, if I look at that thing, if I touch that thing, I'm dead. And I thought about my job at work when I was doing underground services. I was working with the linemen, and I had rubber gloves. They're good for 19,000 volts. They're rubber gloves. You had a leather glove over the outside of it. And yeah, I remember the first time I used those gloves, the guy's got a cable about that big around coming out of the ground. He's getting that thing off with a knife, and there's a bare cable right there. So I want you to grab that thing and stick it, and I go, how do I know these gloves work? I can't see that. I know if I touch it, it's going to get me. And I thought that's the same thing I would think Kohath and his men, his tribe, I got to be careful on this thing. And I do remember, I grabbed it. Well, it didn't kill me. It didn't bite me. Oh, that works, okay. The next day, I'm working on my own on a wire, and I grabbed that wire with my gloves on. And how many of y'all ever wear rubber gloves? The women wear rubber gloves and you wash dishes and stuff. You squeeze that thing, the air comes out of it. Well, I grabbed that wire and it went, and I go, oh, it didn't bite me. That was the air, and the fingers leaked out, and it vibrated in my fingers. I go, oh, no. What? Stick that thing in there tight. It's like, man, oh, that didn't bite. I thought it did. And I think of this guy every time. They got to cover that thing up, and then somebody's got to get a hold of them, those poles and pick it up. Don't touch it. Don't even look at it. It will kill you. And I thought of that. That's just what I know, that feeling. You fear it, you respect it, you don't want to get next to it. You just, So yeah, I did get shocked a couple of times, but that didn't kill me apparently. That's his job. All the holy things. When the camp sets out, Aaron and his sons shall go in, they shall take down the veil and cover the ark of the testimony with it. They shall lay a covering of porpoise skin on it. There's the other cover. And they shall cover that with a cloth of pure blue. Now it's ready to be transported. Over the table of the bread of presence, that's a showbread. It's also spread a cloth of blue and put on it the dishes and the pans and the sacrificial bowls and the jars for the drink offering, and continual bread shall be on it. That thing caught me by surprise right there. They got a showbread. They have 12 loaves, flat look like pancakes basically, 12 stack of 6 and 6. They're on there all week long. Every Sunday they're making a new 12 loaves, and they take those out. The priests eat those. They've been there for all week. I don't know how moldy bread tastes, but okay, God took care of that. And they get 12 more loaves in there. It's all the time. That is the bread. Give me a description. What did Jesus call himself? Bread alive. There's got to be a connection there. Another lesson.
Sure.
Okay. they're gonna wrap this thing up, but the way I read it, maybe I'm wrong, the continual bread shall be on it. I don't know if they covered it up and put the bread on the outside, or they put the cover over the bread never left. Now you're going to put the sticks through there, the poles. You're going to carry that thing with all the utensils on top of it and the bread. Don't drop it. They shall spread over them a cloth of scarlet material and cover the same with a covering of porpoise skin. They shall insert the poles into it. They shall take a blue cloth and cover the lampstand for the light, along with its lamps and its snuffers and the trays and its oil vessels by which they serve it. They shall put it and all its utensils in a covering of porpoise skin, shall put it on the carrying bars. I'm not sure if the bars are on the showbread, or they're laying the lamps across that. I'm not sure, but it's all got to be done. And this is Kohath, his descendants, or whatever you call him, his group. This is their job. The golden altar, they shall spread a blue cloth and cover it with a covering of porpoise skin, and shall insert its poles. Shall take all the utensils of service which they serve in the sanctuary, and put them in a blue cloth, cover them with a covering of porpoise skin, put them on carrying bars. Then they shall take away the ashes of the altar, spread a purple cloth over it. They shall also put on it its utensils by which they serve the connection with the fire pans, the forks, the shovels, the baskins, the utensils, and the altar. They shall spread a cover of porpoise skin over it and insert its poles. Everything was, all the furniture has rings, and they stick poles in it, and that's how you transport this thing. So Kohath has got to do everything on the shoulder. Apparently nothing is so heavy they can't be moved. Okay, now it says in verse 15, when Aaron and his son had finished covering the holy objects and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is to set out, after the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them, so they will not touch the holy objects and die. These are the things in the tent of meeting which the sons of Kohath are to carry. So that's their job. This is the same group that later told Moses, you know, you're just taking too much responsibility. It was one of the Kohathites, the same family, and 250 men all got with him and said, yeah, you know, we're all in this together. We all know God. Why you got to be the boss man all the time? And Moses said, well, I tell you what, tomorrow, this wasn't when they were moved. They'd already set this thing up. And Moses said, well, I tell you what, you bring your fire pans tomorrow. I'll get Aaron to bring his. We'll offer up some incense to God, and we'll see who's acceptable. And that's when 250 men disappeared, because they weren't acceptable. You know, the things that come to my mind, a note right here that I made, are we going to do things God's way, or are we going to do things our way? Because Kohath, this is his responsibility. We haven't even got to Gershon or Merari. They have things they have to do. And you don't switch off like we talked a while ago. You don't switch off.
God's always been a God of detail.
The details, yes. But this, you think about the details that somebody made a comment online and said, you know, that he covered the whole world in 2 chapters. He's got like 6 or 8 chapters on how to build the tabernacle. Think about the details. Okay, let's see. If you look down in verse 19, but do this to them, and they may live and not die. When they approach the most holy objects, Aaron and his son shall go in and assign each of them to his work and to his load. But they shall not go in to see the holy objects even for a moment, or they will die. Aaron had to cover that stuff up. You just look at it, you're going to die. Look at the Gershonites. He spoke to Moses, saying, to take a census of the sons of Gershon, also by their father's household and their families, from 30 years up to 50. Again, you shall number them. Okay, let's look in verse 24. This is the service of the families of Gershonites in serving and carrying. They shall carry the curtains of the tabernacle and the tent of meeting with its covering, and the coverings of porpoise skins and it's on top of it, and the screen for the doorway and the tent of meeting, and the hangings of the court, and the screen for the doorway and the gate of the court, which is around the tabernacle, and the altar, and their cords, and all the equipment for their service, and all that is to be done, they shall perform. Now, I know that Steve is a truck driver. You ever use a truck that has a big tarp on the back? Have you ever used a truck with a big tarp on the back?
Flatbed?
Yeah.
Yep.
And tell me, how heavy are those tarps? Pretty heavy. I tried to move one at work one time at some reason. I go, oh man, this thing, you can't move that sucker. This is their job, to move all the tarps, the coverings, the porpoise skin, the scarlet corded materials. They have to do that. All the service of the sons of Gershonites, all their loads and all that shall be performed at the command of Aaron his son, you shall assign to them as duty all their loads. Now, one thing I did find out, and this one I kind of explained another verse later, they had carts, I think 4 carts or 6 carts, and 12 oxen in this move. I thought they did it by hand. I thought everything, just put it on your shoulder and go with it. They had everything with the rings, all the furniture was carried by shoulder, by hand, people. Everything else was loaded on carts and carried by oxen. And I thought, now that, let's go to 2 Samuel chapter 6. I should mark that. There it is. This is where King David is at war with the Philistines. And they've got the bright idea, we're losing this war. Let's go get the tabernacle. Let's go get the Ark of the Covenant. We're going to tote it out there. And if we take that out there, we're going to whip them Philistines because now God's with us. That was their thinking. First off, you don't put God in a box. That's not even pun intended. And that's not God's way of, God will tell you how to do things. You don't tell God, go out there and win this war for me. So the Philistines, oh man, they heard what's going on. They said, God has entered the camp. We're in trouble. Well, the other Philistines said, look, we're going to fight like men, or we're going to be their servants the rest of our life. The Philistines won the little battle. They took the Ark of the Covenant. Now, what does that do for the Jews? Man, what do we do? We don't have, the Ark of the Covenant's gone. God's gone. And well, now they have, that's where Dagon, their Philistine god, they took the Ark of the Covenant and put it in their temple with their idol. Next day they found Dagon's down on his face before the Ark of the Covenant. Put that booger back up there. The next day he come in, he's down, but now his head and his arms are cut off. And it didn't say broke off, it said cut off. I thought that was interesting. Sure. Little words, you kind of jump out at you, you start reading this thing really close. They said, well, we got to get rid of this thing because it's, it's killing us. That finally kind of dawned on them. So they're going to let David take it back. And this is where I always blame David for just being, what were you thinking? You take and put the Ark of the Covenant on an ox cart and drag it back? But the Levites had ox carts and used them in the moving of the tabernacle. So I had to rethink, maybe this wasn't all David's fault. Okay, in chapter 6, 2 Samuel, David gathered all the chosen men of Israel, 30,000. And David arose and went with all the people who were with him to Baal Judah to bring up from there the Ark of God, which is by the name, the very name of the Lord of hosts, who's enthroned above the cherubim. They placed the Ark of God on a new cart that they might bring it from the house of Abinadab, which was on the hill, and Uzzah and Ahio, the son of Abinadab, were leading the new cart. So they brought it with the Ark of God from the house of Abinadab, which is on the hill, and Ahio was walking ahead of the cart. Meanwhile, David and all the house were celebrating for the Lord with all kinds of instruments made of fir wood, with lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, cymbals. They're having a ball. We're bringing the ark back. We've got the ark back. We're bringing it home. They came to the threshing floor of Nacon. Uzzah reached out toward the ark of God and took a hold of it, for the ox nearly upset it. That always bothered me because the next verse, the anger of the Lord burned against Uzzah, and God struck him down there, right there, for his irreverence, and he died there by the ark.
Randall, it's all to my understanding, didn't God, I mean, you know, the reason he got struck down is because he touched it, but didn't God tell them to carry it?
Yes.
David decided to put it on a new cart
Yes.
instead? So that's the reason why.
But in his defense, this is what come to my mind and what I kind of like, wow, I never thought about that. They used carts and oxen to move the tabernacle, parts of it. But they did not allow, they weren't supposed to move the Ark of the Covenant or the other 6 pieces of furniture we just talked about. That was never intended to be on an ox cart being moved. It was always with the poles on the shoulder of 4 men. That's where David, and I made that note, doing things God's way or our way. Is it okay to do almost God's way? Maybe some of God's way and some of my way? We sing a song like that. What's that a song we... Y'all have
All
to
of you
talk.
and none of me.
That song right there, yeah.
So
But that's-
maybe they thought because David thought, well, it's a new cart.
It's a brand new car.
Nothing's been on it before, surely I can put the Ark of the Covenant.
But it's not what God said. And that's the thing if you don't get anything else out of the lesson all morning, if God specified, you don't take half the specifications and half of what you want and do the way you think it'll work. You don't bargain with God. They weren't even allowed to look at this thing. And yet here they hauling the thing around on an ox cart, uncovered. Uzzah does the only natural thing. It's about to fall off and grab a hold of it. Wrong. If David had done what he was supposed to do, it wouldn't have happened. So it's partly David's thinking, well, they used carts before. And in his defense, let's think about how long has it been since the tabernacle had been moved. I mean, he hasn't built the temple yet. They're still in the tabernacle, but it hasn't been moved for years. I'm sure if Steve quit driving a truck for 20 or 30 years and got back in a truck, he'd say, okay, I remember something about this brake here. It's a word. It would be hard to remember what you did 30 years ago. I'm sure David never did this because he was the tribe of Judah. He never moved the Ark of the Covenant or all the tabernacle, but he knew that I know they used a cart. I wish I'd been there. I hadn't seen this done in 30 years, and I really wasn't involved in it. So in his defense, I can see, but still, if you've got the Word of God and you've got a tribe of Levites there, why don't you go talk to the man and see how do you do this? Let's talk to God. How do we do this? Let's go back to God's Word. How do we do this and satisfy and make God happy? Sir?
To bring up this point, we read that the Israelites wandered in the land 40 years,
Mm-hmm.
but they didn't actually wander, they were there. But they only wandered around 6 months. They moved, from camp to camp. So you're right, they didn't do this every week.
Well, I did read one thing, and I didn't research it. It said during one of the feasts, the tabernacle was broke down every night and reset up every day. I don't remember. I never did do the research on that one, but it was it was like 7 times in a week. But that was once a year. Every time, the other times it was okay. We're not moving, and they said there's only 8 instances where they actually moved in the Old Testament in the wanderings. So yes, you don't do it every day, you forget how to do it. You know, that goes back to this right here. Do we do it once a month, once a year? You know, we do it once a week. Because you forget what we can't remember what Greg preached about last week, you know, what, much less what, I'm sorry, I told on myself, but that's true, you know.
Well, they have a terrible memory problem anyway. I brought up the fact that, I mean, how long was it from crossing the Red Sea to Mount Sinai? How long? It wasn't very long.
1 month, I believe.
Right?
It was 1 month.
So they've already forgotten the God that took them through the Red Sea, because when they wanted to make this calf, they make us a God that can go before us so we can worship.
Well,
You know?
they weren't even a month out from the time they left Egypt and saw his salvation from Egypt to the Red Sea. Oh, what are we going to do? We're going to die here. It wasn't even a month after. You know, so yes, they have short memories. People have short memories. But yes, that's giving David a little credit. He should have gone and consulted. David taught, he consulted God and prayed to God about, do I go out here and go to battle? So why didn't he say, God, how do I move this thing? Instead of thinking, well, I can do this. A clean, brand new cart, that's got to be good. It's not defiling but it's just, there was so many little details. If you overlooked one, just like the rubber gloves, you don't put them on, you're dead. Just like if you don't cover it up and you looked in it, whoops, you're gone. There was one of then when the Philistines, I can back up a verse because I read this thing 2 or 3 times and it still didn't quite add up. Let me back up. If I get my page turned, come on. I don't find it now. There was an instance where the Philistines, they got to get rid of the ark. They decided, they put it on a cart, but they didn't know anything about God. I mean, they're idol worshipers. They put the Ark of the Covenant on a cart, and not oxen, but 2 milk cows. And said, let it go. If it goes back to that city, we know God was in control of all this and what happened. All the people in the city were getting tumors. I guess they were being overrun by mice, rats. And they said, we got to get rid of this. This thing's killing us. So they put the thing on a new cart, and they put 2 milk cows. Actually, the cows had calves. They took the calves away from them and said, let them go. If they go towards Israel, we know God was behind all this. If they just hang around here, then we know it was just coincidence. That's pretty good logic. If you take a milk cow, a cow away from its calf, where is it going to go? Right there. Well, guess what? They headed to Israel. They said, oh, I guess it was God. Well, the Israelites, the thing comes into town, oh, look, the covenant's back. The Ark of the Covenant's back. They looked in it. They said, I think it was like 52,000 people died because they're not respecting, they know what it is, they're not respecting it. It's because, well, I didn't know. Well, guess what? That didn't excuse them. That's the same thing with us today. Well, I didn't know. Well, that doesn't excuse you. You've got the Word of God. They had the law of Moses. We have the whole Word of God here. Whose fault is it we don't know? It's our fault.
Well, you know, David, as good as a king as he was impulsive. He got in trouble several times before, numbering the people and different things. He just, shot from the hip a lot of times, instead of always doing to God.
Yes. Okay, I want to read this one article here that I printed off on the computer because I found myself in it very much so right at the very beginning. And it's called The Tabernacle on the Move. Okay, and then we'll be probably close. I've never heard anyone describe an assembly manual as engaging. It's not for lack of exposure. I've seen a lot of them on the job site. I've even read a few, though I'm not proud to admit it. But in 2 years' time, no one's ever come up to me and said, dude, you've got to read this manual. It's a real page turner. There's a reason no assembly manual was never nominated by the Nobel Prize, and it may have a little more to do with the fact that they all seem to be translated by a first-year English student. Please to be having the downrod not inside the fan cradle until a sufficient time. This is what he's trying to read. This is one of the instructions. He's saying people, they don't even make sense what they write. Manuals are a last resort. We men, and I see myself in this for some reason, turn to it in desperation, only after failing to convince our wives and ourselves that, no, darling, those are just optional pieces, or we think, well, I think it works better upside down anyway. Guilty? Anybody else guilty? Yeah. I guess I rebuilt a carburetor on her Toyota in 1974, and I had, in my defense, it was a carburetor kit with 4 different carburetors. I had parts left over, and she saw them. Why are all the parts left? You didn't do that right. And the car didn't run right, so I had I didn't have any kind of argument there. So, but anyway, I guess it's no surprise that I haven't had such a hard time reading through the last chapters of Exodus, starting in chapter 25. God provides Moses with a very detailed set of instructions concerning the furnishings of the tabernacle, their dimensions, their features, their material, and so on. My eyes instinctively glaze over whenever I read the word cubits, so it's a struggle to make it through so many chapters dedicated to assembly instructions. Still, though my own reluctance to let poorly translated manual tell me how to put a ceiling fan together doesn't mean that God preserved these tabernacle instructions as some kind of filler. Like everything in His Word, God ensured that these specific chapters survived so many thousands of years for a reason. Thanks to the Raiders of the Lost Ark, the general public is pretty well aware that the Ark of the Covenant was designed to be carried by 2 poles, inserted in 2 sets of rings attached to the Ark. In fact, the Bible is pretty clear that this is the only way to be carried. When King David tried transporting the Ark on an ox cart many years later, God killed the man who reached out to steady it with his hand. What you might not know is that the pole system was not all unique to the Ark. Many of the first furnishings of God's tabernacle were designed with a similar rings so they could be carried on similar poles. But why? At the time God commanded the tabernacle to be constructed, Israel was en route to the promised land. When God's pillar of cloud with fire moved, Israel packed up and moved with it. When that pillar stopped, Israel set up camp and stopped. No Israelite had a home or property to speak of. The entire nation was just passing through the wilderness on its way to something better. When the time came for building the tabernacle, God provided Israel's craftsmen with designs that would lend themselves to being easy to be moved. In addition to the Ark of the Covenant, the table for the showbread, the altar of burnt offerings, the altar of incense were each crafted with sets of rings, allowing them to be easily lifted and transported by poles, and providing God's tabernacle with a unique feature of mobility. Even the tabernacle itself was built with a modular design that allowed for efficient setup and takedown. They said they could take this thing down in about 3 hours and put it back up in 3 hours. 3 and 3, not 3 total. The outer walls to the furnishings within, everything about its design was a reminder that even though the tabernacle was a constant, its location was not. When God moved, Israel and the tabernacle were to follow. Do not put roots down, and did not stay where they were. Carrying the tabernacle, our situation isn't so different. Israel was following God out of Egypt through the wilderness into the promised land. We're following God out of sin through spiritual wilderness into the kingdom. God's journey was primarily physical, while ours is spiritual. But like Israel, we too are following God with a mobile tabernacle. As said in Corinthians, do you not know that you're the temple of God and the Spirit of God dwells in you? Tabernacle. One of the big reasons we can draw from the mobility of God's tabernacle is a warning. Don't get settled. This isn't the end of the trip. The rings were a fully integrated part of the tabernacle equipment, reminding everyone who saw them that even though they were stationary at the moment, it was only a matter of time before they moved again in their journey toward the promised land. We too must remain mindful that we are at the moment isn't where we will be staying. This isn't the home that we're looking for. Home is in the distance. This is a temporary stopping point. It's not always easy to remember In this life, we can acquire property, houses, in addition to physical responsibilities. We can get so entrenched in taking care of things at a particular pit stop on our journey that we forget about it even being a journey. Many of the responsibilities of this life, while certainly valid and important, are not the bigger picture. The tabernacle must be in constant state of readiness to pick up and move